Thank you for the introduction. Yep, I'm Neil Davey. I was a visiting scholar at the Centre for Energy Ethics in June earlier this year. So this is essentially my Energy Café from then. So just a little bit more about me. I'm now a fourth year PhD, so I'm just actually finishing off, about to submit my PhD thesis. Before I returned to higher education to take a master's in international environmental studies, which led to me doing this PhD. I was a photographer for the best part of 2 decades. So moving into kind of academia led me to use photography in a different way. And I've been doing so ever since. So I've been kind of working on Scottish Islands, remote Scottish Islands. I was working on EGG with their small hybrid renewable grid. I'm looking at the kind of using photography to explore the motivations, impacts, and expectations of the grid on EGG. And then I decided for my PhD project to move to Orkney, which is very different, larger population, larger islands, larger geographically, and as opposed to EGG, where their small grid is very inconspicuous. Energy, in particular renewable energy, is all around you on Orkney, as any of you who've been there will know. So what I'm going to do today is just present you a little bit of my work. I'm going to give you a little presentation which is centered around an article that I wrote, my first PhD article. And then after that, I'm going to end with a short presentation of my exhibition, photo and multimedia exhibition, which is on display in Stromness just now at the ICNZ, Island Centre for Net Zero. So here we have Mossmoran in Fife. So energy landscapes are evolving, and our experiences and perceptions, well, they matter. We need to study how people relate to these new energy environments. So when I was a child, I used to look over from the outskirts of Edinburgh towards Mossmoran, and I used to see this flare at Shell's gas plant, flaring into the Fife sky. And I would find it oddly comforting on grey days. Now today, you can still see this plant flaring into the sky. But my children, your children, they also see different energy landscapes. They see wind turbines, solar panels, they see wave and tidal devices, especially if you live in islands like Orkney. These technologies are now part of everyday visual life, although we still lack understanding of how people experience these changing landscapes. Energy scholars, including Sanchez Pantoja and van der Horst, have called for deeper research into how attitudes shape energy aesthetics. But what I do in my research, I explore what I call visuality, how energy infrastructure is experienced through visual encounters. So this helps us understand how energy transitions are seen and felt beyond mere appearance. So in my PhD research in the Orkney Islands, I examined what shapes people's visual and emotional responses to energy infrastructure in rural landscapes. So I combine arts-based research, science technology studies, theory, and ethnography to explore often overlooked individual experiences of energy transitions. My first PhD article, which this presentation is loosely based on, called Altered Landscapes of a Post-Carbon Future, Visual Response Imaginaries as Experiences of Energy Infrastructure in the Orkney Islands. It originally began as a critique of, some of you may have heard of, the socio-technical imaginaries framework. It also reviewed the role of photography in energy studies, and using a grounded theory and visual ethnography approach to analyse visual responses, I highlighted the need for more engaged interdisciplinary case studies, studies that centre individual perspectives in energy research. So this led me to develop this concept of visual response imaginaries. So Sheila Yasinoff and San Yoon Kim first introduced this concept of socio-technical imaginaries. Essentially collectively imagined futures, often shaped by national science and technology projects. So these future visions, these visions are often driven by powerful actors, governments, industry, and they influence how society responds to innovation, typically emphasizing technology as the solution to problems like climate change. Now, while individuals can reshape these imaginaries, the dominant narratives usually prevail. Studying local energy experiences, however, reveals how people reinterpret these visions in everyday life, creating their own stories. However, this framework often overlooks the complexity and the subjectivity of personal experience. Sarah Pink, among others, critique this disconnect, arguing that socio-technical imaginaries focus too much on technology and not enough on real lived realities. Strengers and colleagues also argue that everyday experiences offer a more accurate basis for understanding future energy transitions. So they introduce social practice imaginaries, grounded in current evidence from individual and household energy practices, rather than speculative visions. So I've sort of built upon that approach, bringing in more of a kind of a visual component, everyday interactions, visual interactions with energy infrastructure. So this approach helps predict real world outcomes and really highlights the personal, emotional, and intimate aspects of energy transitions. And as researchers, we must share the diverse stories, like the stories we saw on the short film there, stories that challenge dominant narratives and reflect how past and present shape future energy encounters. Most visual studies in energy research until now have focused on opposition or preferences and not really on how people truly interact with energy infrastructure. Lutzire et al. Included nighttime images of offshore wind turbines, but still emphasized quantifiable preferences. Sabile et al. And Divine Right used visual indicators and computer-generated images to assess public opinion. And while aesthetic concerns and the NIMBYism concept are well studied, there's been less attention given to the more subjective experiences of individuals in these rapidly changing landscapes. Visual impact is a major reason for opposition to renewable energy, yet it's one of the hardest issues to address. While concerns like noise and health are often cited, visual objections are equally valid. So back in 2000, Walsink found that visual intrusion had more influence on attitudes toward wind turbines than climate concerns. Pascaletti described turbines as obscuring scenic desert mountain scenery. And Divine Right noted the prevalence of negative framing in visual impact assessments. So this negative language that's used to describe renewable energy infrastructure is quite revealing, including terms like visual burden and intrusion. And additionally, surveys that have been used often measure how much renewable energy developments despoil valued landscapes. However, energy development has been shaping the landscapes of Orkney for over 70 years. The islands are now a leader in renewables, with plans to become a net supplier of power to the UK. Not all projects succeed, like back in 2008 when a planned wind farm at Merrinblow near Stromness was rejected over concerns about landscape and heritage, potentially impacting Orkney's World Heritage status. And while Orkney is often seen as a green energy utopia, portrayed as such in the media, with 10% of residents generating their own power, fuel poverty is high and remains a major issue, in fact, higher than the mainland average. The discussions about Orkney's energy and future still often favour industry voices over community perspectives. But to ensure a fair and inclusive transition, local views must be balanced with expert input. While energy research often focuses on how new technologies affect consumer habits, few studies have explored how people respond to these visual changes in their surroundings. So what I did in my research, I used visual ethnographic data. You saw some of the photos on the video there. So it's photos taken by me and by a group of participants from throughout the Orkney Islands between June 2022 and June 2023. So I began my fieldwork with a visual survey of Orkney's energy infrastructure, pre-identified sites and some just on spec after arriving there. So I used photography to connect me with both the environment and the community. So I selected participants based on their proximity to energy infrastructure in everyday life, whether they were looking at a wind turbine from their kitchen window, or whether they would see a tidal energy device on their ferry trip between islands, or if they were just out walking their dog or on their commute to work. And using photo elicitation method, a method which was originally introduced by John Collier Jr. back in the 1950s, laying out photographs, talking about them, discussing them, their photos and my photos, we explored how landscapes and relationships shape perceptions. So this method sparked conversations and revealed how people experience renewable energy in their daily environments. So as the research progressed, it became clear that energy infrastructure visually is far more significant in daily life in Orkney than reported. So through the photo-based discussions, participants shared a wide range of reactions to their visual encounters. I categorized these into what I call visual response imaginaries, and this kind of gave me the idea for the article on the visual response imaginaries. So these visual response imaginaries are essentially responses that are triggered by the infrastructure and shaped by how people interact with it. The responses are influenced by internal factors like values, emotions, and habits, as well as external ones like environment and community. And because responses vary so widely, even within the same area, it's difficult to imagine a collective reaction. They're all very, very unique to each individual. So this highlights the limits of frameworks such as socio-technical imaginaries and underscores the value of individual perspectives in understanding the fluid and uncertain nature of everyday energy encounters. Artistic engagement with energy infrastructure was very, very common among the Orkney participants. Some felt that wind turbines added aesthetic value to the landscape and inspired photography or painting. Others would consider using them in future artwork and film, although some still preferred traditional Orkney scenes without any signs of renewable energy infrastructure. Spatial responses were notable. One household, for example, let their garden grow to visually interact with nearby turbines. They used flags and built swallow perches as subtle countermeasures. And while views varied, no one actually found wind turbines inherently ugly. And aesthetically, they were compared to structures like the Queensferry Crossing Bridge. So these responses show how people relate to technology in personal and often subconscious ways. And as Sarah Pink notes, emotion and everyday activities shape both our present and imagined futures and should be central to socio-technical research. So unsurprisingly, among the participants, there were a wide range of emotions expressed toward energy infrastructure, especially the oil rigs that you see in Scapa Flow and the wind turbines. So some felt pride or optimism, others felt discomfort or annoyance. Some were indifferent. One viewed turbines in deserted areas as dystopian, reminiscent of American oil fields, while another was disturbed by the light flicker coming into their home. One commuter expressed annoyance that a turbine disrupted their favourite view, but others saw them as hopeful signs of climate action. Some participants personified turbines, They gave them names or human traits. And the reactions to the red lights on top of the turbines on the island of Sandy varied. So some found them really frustrating, and others found them comforting on long dark nights. But even those who were annoyed by energy infrastructure often accepted it as necessary for climate goals. And long-term residents tended to express more negative views. And many agreed that more community involvement and benefits are needed. Participants also had unique embodied responses to local energy infrastructure. One synchronized their swimming movements with the wind turbines in the bay here, describing it as a meditative experience. Another participant humorously attached a rival football team's flag to a friend's domestic turbine as a birthday prank. And geographically, wind turbines served as weather indicators. One family commented on how they checked the direction of the blades to predict storms. Turbines also acted as landmarks for navigation, something I found myself using when I was driving around Orkney. For example, using them to mark turns on roads. So reflecting how this energy infrastructure has become intertwined with daily life beyond its original purpose. But while some responses to energy infrastructure in Orkney were light-hearted, others did raise serious concerns. Some residents worried about tourism impacts, and they were forced to adjust their routines to avoid light flicker or the red lights, like you see here in this photograph. These emotional and physical responses highlight the need to consider local practical issues that are often overlooked in mainstream energy research. So the concept of visual response imaginaries shifts the focus from technology and economics to how people emotionally and physically relate to and engage with energy systems. Despite Orkney's long history with energy production, industry and policy still tend to dominate the narrative, and this underscores the need for greater community engagement and attention to individual practices. But predicting how people will respond to the visual impact of new energy developments is difficult. Environmental impact assessments can't really capture these personal reactions, whilst concepts such as socio-technical imaginaries can help analyse transitions. The dominant narratives often overshadow local voices like those of the participants in Orkney. So this calls for a shift towards frameworks that value everyday experiences and diverse attitudes, so moving beyond top-down approaches. And by focusing on empirical research and lived experience, we can gain deeper insights into social processes. So what I hoped that I showed here was that these individual visual responses, the emotional, environmental, or embodied, offer grounded perspectives on future uncertainty. But the challenge is to integrate these views into energy planning so that these perspectives are included in shaping energy futures. The visual response imaginaries also showed that people will adapt to visual impacts in their own ways. But in some contexts, the question could be asked, should they have to? Okay, I'm just checking the time there, and I think we seem to be good for time. So the third part of this presentation, one of the great things about doing the PhD in the Department of Art, Design and Drama is I have a bit of flexibility when it comes to output and dissemination. So I decided to have part of it as an artistic output and put together a photography and multimedia exhibition. So this is on display in Orkney and Stromness just now, but I want to just kind of introduce this, and hopefully you'll enjoy looking at it and talk about it a little bit. So the Altered Landscapes of a Post-Carbon Future, an Orkney Islands exhibition. is a collection of 12 of my photographs that I took between 2022 and 2024 when I was doing my research throughout the Orkney Islands. So using visual and multimedia storytelling, I explored how the local community responds to these shifting energy landscapes. So weaving together Orkney's rich heritage, transition to renewable energy, and its imagined future as a model for sustainable innovation. So the exhibition was co-curated with my partner, Veronica, and 4 of the photographs were also displayed in the installation space at the Energy in Motion conference in the DCA in June, under the title Reflect, Create, Communicate, Visual Narratives of Orkney's Energy Transition. So the exhibition invites viewers to reconsider conventional perspectives on energy infrastructure and landscape transformation. Each image has its own multimedia presentation. So these include sound, poetry, music, and animation. They are inspired by the responses to the photographs during photo elicitation discussions and workshops. Some of the images are meant to challenge and spark conversation, and others offer a more subtle, layered interpretation of energy experiences across the Orkney Islands. But together, I tried to provide a multi-sensory exploration of how energy transitions are reshaping the environment and the community. And also my creative interpretation of Orkney's energy transition, my way of using photography and multimedia to challenge conventional thinking about energy infrastructure and landscape change. So the exhibition is hosted at the ICNZ, the Island Centre for Net Zero, at the Orkney Research and Innovation Campus in Stromness. So the centre addresses the unique challenges faced by islands, the Outer Hebrides, Orkney Islands and Shetland, focusing on holistic and innovative approaches to decarbonising their entire energy systems, with the islands set to contribute significantly to the UK's energy generation from wind, wave and tidal sources. So they very kindly offered to host this exhibition, and it's still up if anyone's around there. I believe it's still up. The exhibition opened on the 2nd of April this year with a lecture and a reception, including the short film that I showed earlier. And the opening was attended by fellow researchers, faculty, industry, as well as several of the project participants. It was also part of the PhD Research School Empowered Futures field course to the Orkney Islands. So Empowered Futures is a PhD research school which has the aim of enhancing societal and professional relevance of doctoral education by addressing social and environmental issues related to low carbon energy transitions. And it's led by the Faculty of Landscape and Society at the Norwegian University of Life Sciences here in Ås, Norway, where I am just now. The school provides a platform for PhD candidates in energy social science with joint courses, activities, etc. And this field course was delving into the impact of small-scale renewable energy projects on local island communities. So everything tied together nicely in April for this exhibition with the ICNZ and the PhD Research School. So to better understand Orkney's evolving energy story and to make sense of, well, literally thousands of photographs that were taken throughout the project, we curated the exhibition according to the geographical orientation of the ICNZ hub overlooking Stromness, with each of the 4 walls developing a distinct theme and direction. Altered Landscapes therefore takes the viewer on a journey across the land and the seascapes of the Orkney Islands and beyond to the north, east, south and west. Each photograph is titled with the coordinates of the location from which it was taken, and each wall also has a poem inspired by workshops and discussions with participants throughout the project. And there's a QR link to an online gallery image with the multimedia component along with the exact location on a map. So you can see this online as well, but I'll just talk a little bit about how the exhibition is presented. So on the North Wall delves into themes of uncertainty and future outcomes, the clash between preservation and progress, and the balance between innovation and inevitable change. North. To the north, the sea dreams in silence, yet her fury echoes through the expanse of untapped power awaiting the hand of man. Patterns etched by water and wind, the horizon, a line on which to write a dialogue we've yet to decide. To the north, the future drifts with the tides, navigating uncertainty between storm and calm, limit and possibility. Skylines shift with energy yet to be seen, across restless boundaries, between darkness and light, hope and fear. No matter how they paint it, on a clear day, we'll be able to see them anyway, the unavoidable mark of human ingenuity. And on the east, we had a triptych, reflecting on themes of serenity and connection with nature, highlighting the harmony between tradition and modernity, as well as the importance of patience and balance in rural landscapes. And then on the theme of threes, with the three images, the three turbines, we had a haiku with 3 lines. And again, this was inspired by reactions to photos during workshops and discussions. A setting, idyll, in nature's golden embrace, tranquility's kiss. And to the south, we delved into themes of resilience and adaptation, exploring the interplay between ancient, technological, and community structures, reflecting on memory, collective progress, the passage of time, space and place, and home. To the south, as Walkmill's tides retreat, shadows drift between now and then, voices woven into stone and blade, echoing movement, uncertainty, and change. Grains of sand carry the island's tale, a story of history, community, and progress entwined, where journeys converge, resilient still, refined by the passage of time. A traditional scene beside one in motion, dissolving into a shared vision, yet in this place, shaping its own evolution, can you hear them talk about a just transition? And finally, to the west, we explored a world where technology and nature intertwine in captivating and unsettling ways, evoking existential contemplation with dystopian undertones. So contrasting natural phenomena with man-made forces and focusing on the tension between technology and nature. Technology often presented as an ominous force. It's a bit like solar punk's darker cousin, a world where technology and nature interact in ways that are both mesmerizing and unsettling. West. We once stood as beacons of change, fueling your dreams from horizon to shore. Isolated outposts beneath daunting skies, drawing blood from the earth in the name of progress. They arrived on winds thick with promise and hope, blades spinning through the night, like armies advancing toward a new dawn, weaving their tapestry across the sky. But when they falter in stillness or storm, and can no longer meet your ever-growing need, we endure steady, unseen, forged in fire, a testament to industry. We are not just remnants of human ambition, relics of a bygone era, nor monuments to extraction. As long as the sky shimmers in ribbons of light, our torches will forever burn bright.